Welcome to Taking Them. I'll start again. That was rubbish. Rubbish. I've completely forgot what to do. That's what's happened. It's been that long. Professional voice. Welcome to Taking the Myth, your topical, skeptical discussion show. I'm Stephen Knight, pronouns he, him, and joining me, as always, is Iram Ramzan. Iram, how the hell are you?
I'm sorry, who are you again?
I'm Stephen Knight, pronouns he, him. Just announcing the old pronouns now. That's what I do now.
It's been a while, so I kind of forgot who you were for a sec there.
I wasn't sure whether you were aware that I'm a male.
Pronouns.
Yeah, and I think it'd probably be helpful if every time I talk...
Well, it's debatable, but yeah.
to announce my pronouns, because if I don't do this, it's going to be very difficult for you to kind of discern whether or not I'm a good guy. And I very much want to be thought of as a good guy. Stephen Knight, he, him.
Stephen Knight, good fella.
Yeah, but however, I did notice you didn't announce your pronouns, which leads me to believe that you're perhaps not possibly a good person. I don't know if you want to clear that up now and just let us all know how you'd like to identify.
I'm not a good person, so I don't really care.
I just identify as evil.
Don't really care.
Yeah,
I identify as just the queen of the universe and general awesome person, really. I'm happy with whatever pronoun.
As is your right, and any arguments to the contrary are a hate crime, which seems to be where we're heading. So we're still in COVIDville. We're still sort of in restrictions, you know. They seem to be quite fluid, sort of like gender, really. It's one thing one day, one thing another day, and people are getting a little bit fed up.
The rules are just more gender fluid than Sam Smith, I think. Wait, is that a hate crime?
I don't know. You'd have to ask they. Or is it them?
I'll have to ask J.K. Rowling on that. Yeah,
there's so much. I tell you what, this episode's going to be one long rant about.
We've got like 2 months worth of rants to get out.
Welcome to the 4-hour bumper edition of Taking the Myth. Let's talk about the COVID lockdown situation as briefly as possible, because we do mention it every episode, and I think people are getting tired of it. But have you? You to be fair, were always quite annoyed about the whole situation and very very critical of the government and the situation in general, and having to restrict our freedoms. And I was a little bit more do as you're told. I understand when we first went into lockdown, and now I'm getting a little bit of fed up. And I is like I keep saying time and time again, this is one of these areas where I'm not sufficiently educated to say what is correct. We'll get a better overview when all this is done. At the start, it was a case of we have to save grandma. Now I'm like, fuck grandma, I want to go clubbing. So where are you now on this whole COVID lockdown? We're all going to die, maybe not. Perhaps the modelling was wrong. All our businesses are going under kind of situation.
So I can see why we needed to have a temporary lockdown anyway in the beginning, because we really were unprepared for this. Even though we should really know by now that these types of pandemics are pretty much part of our future and our life now. We just know there's going to be something. You know, we had SARS, we had MERS, we had foot and mouth and all that. So we know that these illnesses are going to happen. So we should really be prepared for them, but we weren't. And I think we were told in the beginning that we needed the lockdown to protect the NHS and to flatten the curve. That's the reason that was given for the lockdown. So I could see why we needed it. We needed it to save lives and try to suppress as many deaths and infections as possible. But now it just seems like the strategy is, let's try and eradicate the virus, which is just not possible. I mean, Matt Hancock was saying that's the basic strategy now. We're trying to wipe out the virus. The health secretary, in case anyone doesn't know. And you just think, so now we've gone from protecting the NHS to wiping out this disease, which is never going to happen because it's out there now. So which one is it? And yeah, I mean, lockdown, there's no lockdown, although certain areas are under local lockdown. So, places in Greater Manchester, for example, in the Northeast, you're not allowed to meet somebody from a different household, and minimise contact with as many people as possible. Whereas in the rest of the country where there is no local lockdown, now it's just the rule of 6. So, if there are more than 6 of you, then you'll probably get fined, you'll get dispersed, you'll be wiped out with a ray gun, I don't know. And now obviously masks are compulsory everywhere, which is getting to be very irritating because I find it very difficult to breathe in them. But hey ho, if that's the law, I will abide like a good citizen, so I will wear a mask wherever it's required. And I've noticed now that the people who don't wear a mask, they are in a minority, and when they don't wear one, they're the ones that look conspicuous now.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was a case of, maybe half the people were wearing a mask, or maybe just under half, and it didn't really, like, the people who were wearing masks would stand out more. But now it's the other way around. And sometimes, and I hate to admit this, sometimes I find myself when I'm on the tube and I see someone not wearing a mask, I just, do a double take and think, oh my God, why they're not wearing one. But
I found myself doing that, and I didn't think I would, but I've actually started looking around to see if I can see people who aren't wearing masks. And it's funny though, because so at the beginning, I got really irritated with people who half wore a mask, so they'd have it half on the face and the nose exposed, and I'd rather, I probably wouldn't even notice if they didn't wear a mask, but the fact that they had it on, they couldn't even manage to wear it properly, really frustrated me. And these people I see walking around where they just have it hanging down under the chin.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a fuck you. That's worse than not wearing one. It's like saying, yeah, sure, I've got one, but I'm not going to wear it. How do you like them apples? Well, talking of going viral, see what I did there? Honestly, you can't pay for that level of segue. Speaking of going viral, did you see the letter of support for J.K. Rowling in support of her right to opine on certain trans issues without threats of rape and or cancellation and just general online abuse and hysteria? It might be worth backtracking here and just explaining who J.K. Rowling is. Is it Rowling or Rowling? That's the first question.
Rowling.
Expectus pronuncius.
Rowling.
Right, okay. A famous author, authored the Harry Potter books. I've heard they're popular. I haven't read them myself because I'm not a virgin. I'm only kidding. That was unnecessary. That was an unfair joke. I haven't read them. However, she was beloved. She was a national treasure, a British icon, this uber successful fiction storyteller who'd come from somewhat humble beginnings, I seem to have read, and made it big time with these incredible stories that have changed people's lives. She was a darling of the left as well, because from before all this, I seem to remember her being quite a reactionary in terms of cancellation culture herself.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, and then she surprised everyone by coming out against Corbyn. So she started poking around in the area of self-identification laws that were proposed and the entire issue of puberty blockers and medical treatment for people who feel they may be trans from a young age. And she wrote openly about this issue from a stance of compassion, from a pro-trans rights perspective, but she outlined some, I believe, perfectly legitimate concerns about medical intervention in young people who may be suffering from gender dysphoria, may be deeply unhappy and looking for solutions and opting for the wrong ones. And she's voiced some serious concerns about that. And these concerns, it appears, are backed up with a growing number of people who are detransitioning and saying the kind of things that J.K. Rowling, or they're examples of the very thing J.K. Rowling's concerned about. But obviously, we're not allowed to have a nuanced, intelligent, thoughtful and balanced discussion on this. She must be burned as a witch. What's your thoughts? Transphobe?
I think the issue came about couple of months ago. Oh God, it was a couple of months ago. It just feels time has just become one big blur now. It's all lost all meaning. But she retweeted an op-ed piece. I can't remember where it was. I don't know if it was in some sort of obscure progressive blog, but it it discussed, quote unquote, people who menstruate.
Oh, yeah.
She took issue with the fact that the story didn't use the word women, and then quote retweeted it saying, people who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumben, Wimpund, Wumud. And yeah. And then she followed that up because a lot of people really just got on her case after that. There was a lot of backlash when even the Harry Potter stars came out and went against her. Talk about the hand that bites you. Biting the hand that feeds you. Sorry.
I knew what you meant. I was with you all the way there. I didn't even notice.
Yeah. So that's my second RoboCop moment there. So yeah, biting the hand that feeds you. And then she said, and she made a really good point and said, well, if sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If it's not real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth, and it's not. I mean, she wasn't coming out and saying, kill all trans people. I hate trans people. They don't deserve any rights. Far from it, But I don't see why supporting trans rights means that you have to erase women. I mean, why is the word women being erased? I mean, I'm now known as a menstruator. What the fuck? What are men then? Are men? I mean, they're obviously not menstruators, but how would you refer to as men? People who, I don't know, can't multitask? I don't know.
It's a mess.
But yeah, it is. It really is. But, it just is slightly ironic, really, isn't it? And that J.K. Rowling was the very person who kind of used to, she was slightly reactionary in the first place. She was part of this cancel culture, and now she's found herself on the opposite side. Now she's the one who's being cancelled, and there are writers and public figures who she probably hates or doesn't like and never would engage with them or would have sneered at them in the past, and now they're the ones who are actually defending her.
It's a mess, and I mean, I suppose it might be worth pointing out that this is very interesting because she's not just anybody. She's not just someone who's misspoke at work or tweeted the wrong thing and people have hounded them out of their job and forced them into an apology. She's literally too big to be cancelled. She's worth a ridiculous amount of money. They can try all they like, but at the end of the day, because of what she's accomplished and the position she's in, it would be very difficult to cancel J.K. Rowling. And second thing is, if I'm putting my charitable head on, this whole referring to women as menstruators instead of women thing, if I'm being charitable, it seems to me like a well-intentioned yet misguided effort not to exclude trans people. They've recognised that there is a statistically significant number of people who identify as trans who may feel left out if terms like women are used as the default. Now, it's daft that they blanket apply this to all trans women, because not all trans women give a shit about this. They want to live their lives, identify and live as a woman, and be left the fuck alone with all this stupid identity politics. To be honest, whenever I see this sort of lunacy, it's never actually coming from a trans person. But the point being is, trans people and intersex people make up something like 1% of the population, which means 99% of the time, male or female are perfectly adequate concepts to describe things and work for the vast majority of people. We don't throw away concepts because of outliers or people who don't conform to stereotypical gender norms. Them people are on the fringes, so you don't redefine an entire concept for those people. It's like it's uncontroversial in a biology book to say a human being has 2 legs. However, we know that many people don't have 2 legs for various different reasons, whether it be injury, whether it be birth defects. There's a multitude of reasons why humans don't have 2 legs, but we wouldn't feel justified in rewriting biology books to accommodate these outliers. So that's where I am with this. It's completely misguided to try and reinvent concepts and language to accommodate a tiny minority of people. And at the same time, they don't seem to care that this really is having an adverse effect on women's rights and a woman's right to be recognised as well. These things always seem I'm talking specifically about zealous fundamental religions, which this sort of intersectionality transacts from appears to be. The people who are the collateral damage of these sort of things all the time appears to be women.
Yeah, but it's true. If you look, if you look across many countries in the world, there are places out there where it's so difficult to be a woman, and the reason why women are discriminated against is purely because of their sex. They're seen as weaker biologically, and therefore are seen as fair game, really. And if you as J.K. Rowling said, if sex means nothing, then really what you're saying about the lives of those women who have just been systematically discriminated against, how would you explain why that has happened? And like, for example, Islamic fundamentalists, they would claim that women, there are hadiths that they quote in which it said that women are deficient when it comes to religion, and that's why they're not allowed certain accesses to spaces. So some mosques will discriminate against women. There will be some mosques where they won't have adequate provisions just for women because it's not important for them to pray in a mosque because, they can stay at home. That's what their role is, to stay at home and look after the children and cook dinner for the man who's been out working and praying all day long. That's why women in countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran are forced to cover up. Nobody really enforces dress codes on men. And you're right, this is very much a fringe issue that seems to make a lot of headlines, where I think the majority of the population just really wouldn't care about these things that much. They'd just be, absolutely incredulous, thinking, what on earth are these issues? What are these pronouns that they're talking about?
Yeah, I don't care. I will happily accept a trans woman's femininity. I have and do. I will refer to them by whatever pronoun they prefer. I'll treat people as individuals, which is what we need to get back to. And I think that with J.K. Rowling's pointing out an issue that I think is going to become a huge scandal in the coming years, and that's
it is already, because there's a woman, a 23-year-old woman who is taking legal action against the Tavistock clinic in London, because she says she should have really been challenged more by the staff there over her decision to transition to a man when she was a teenager. A judge has given the go-ahead for this hearing, and lawyers will be arguing that children can't give informed consent to treatment delaying puberty. I mean, I think it's astonishing that you can do that when somebody is at such a young age. I mean, they've not fully developed. They're going to be going through so many changes. They've got hormonal issues as well, where, fine, if you're an adult and you make a decision to change your sex legally and you have an operation, fine, as long as, you know what you're doing and you're fully aware of your actions. But a child to be able to do that, it is scandalous. It really is.
Obviously, gender dysphoria, which is a condition, plays a big part into this. And statistically, the overwhelming majority of people who experience gender dysphoria when they're younger actually get through it and get over it and are happy to identify and live as their biological sex. So that's one thing. And if you're going to intervene early and push them down the path of transitioning and puberty blockers and things like that, that's a whole mess. And it will become a complete and utter legal minefield in the coming years, I believe. And there's a lot of data to suggest as well that men that would just normally grow up to be gay men, which is perfectly normal and natural within society, are actually being almost, I don't want to say coerced, and I'll probably have to be careful here for legal reasons, but are encouraged to transition because they have feminine qualities. Well, it's okay to be a feminine man. It's okay to be a masculine woman. It doesn't necessarily indicate that you're trans. And I say this knowing full well that transitioning is probably the right thing for some people, probably isn't for others. But if we're going to create an industry or a society when any young person who's confused about their sexuality or might think they would be happier to be a woman or a man is pushed down that path from a really early age before they're really fully aware of who they are and how they feel, I think it's a very dangerous precedent to set. And we are seeing this now in the case of people who are detransitioning. And this concern to me doesn't come from a place of fuck the trans. I mean, they speak about J.K. Rowling as if she's banging on about cocks in frocks and saying things like, keep them away from my kids. Because every time someone's screeching about her, they're saying things like, she's tweeting out transphobic hate. She's endangering the lives of transgender people everywhere. And I ask for a single example from these lunatics online that form mobs and create so much of a signal. And every single time they can never provide a single instance of any transphobia whatsoever. So it makes me very suspicious that if J.K. Rowling isn't allowed to speak about this issue in the way that she has, then literally no one's allowed to speak about it because they're not going to accept any conversation or challenge to the path of progression that we seem to be firmly on.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how, you talking about intersex and trans before, but intersex people are very rarely mentioned.
Yeah.
And there probably are statistically more of them than trans people. So why do we talk about their rights?
I mean, I've read a great book on this recently by a lady called Dr. Deborah So. Now, she's as a liberal progressive as you like. I mean, she was a sexologist before she delved into this arena. Basically, it was her goal to try and dispel some taboos around sex, guilt and shame people feel for certain sexual interest and things like that. That's not a very conservative pursuit, is it? It'd be very difficult to label her a conservative for that kind of interest and skill set and goal, should I say. But she's released a book on gender. It's called The End of Gender, Debunking the Myths About Sex and Identity in Our Society. And she approaches it from a completely scientific driven, logical look at the issues, and it's with compassion as well. And it's all the time she's trying to wade through the ideology. She keeps trans rights firmly in the foreground of what she has to say. So I'd recommend that book. But obviously, if you go to Google her or see anything written about her on social media, you'd think she called for the extermination of all trans women. So this topic has become so unbelievably toxic that the people who you want to be amplified on it, the people who are talking from a place of compassion and science, are unable to do so. And at what cost are we talking here? It's certainly already clear that it's cost a few people's happiness in the sense that they've been coerced or pushed down the path of transition when really they shouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few years. But women have fought for centuries, well, millennia really, to get their rights. And, sex is a protected characteristics. We're entitled to single-sex changing rooms and bathrooms. And, a lot of feminists, they will argue that we do need these spaces because statistically, the most harmful thing to a woman can be a man. I mean, not all men, hashtag obviously, but they, single sex spaces are protected in that sense. And I just hope that this very sort of very minority voice doesn't really take over and people do and we do have some common sense injected into this, because it's like somebody once mentioned to me, a university student. She was just saying, I don't understand why it is that, men have their toilets, but then now they've changed the women's to, women and gender neutral. And that's a very, very good point. Why is it that, men's spaces are protected and women's are lumped in with, everything else? How does that make sense?
These are perfectly valid questions and concerns, but we're not even allowed to have the conversation at the minute. And obviously there are people who just hate progression, hate change, hate trans people. This can obviously come from a conservative religious perspective or just a bigot, an innate bigotry in people. I get that, and obviously trans people need to be protected from that. But at the same time,
obviously, I don't think anyone would deny that. I think everyone will say that it's only right that whoever you are, you deserve to be treated with respect and not be discriminated against.
I just happen to think as well that lying about biological reality will disadvantage the trans movement in the end. I'm a huge believer in the truth will set you free. You can't build your foundations of a movement on faulty information because it will crumble. And people will then take that as indicative of the trans movement as a whole, and it's not. Obviously, the loudest voices seem to be the most unhinged. It's a paradox in that sense because the people who you want talking on about this are reasonably minded trans people who want to live their lives and can articulate themselves and talk about their unique struggles and what they've been through in their thought process. But these are the kind of people who just want to get on with their lives and don't want to involve themselves in this sort of public spat. So you won't hear from them. So paradoxically, we need to hear from them, but obviously they're just living their lives the best they can.
I think the other issue is that it's just a case that, politicians, especially if they're progressive, they're really afraid of quote unquote being on the wrong side of history, really. So all of that will just trump common sense. So that's why I think maybe this whole issue of gender self-identification is presented as like this new issue, this new sort of part of the new gay rights.
Yeah, which is an interesting one to lump it in there with. I've heard from a lot of gay men who are like, why are you lumping me in with this? Why are we mutual allies here? And I get it. Obviously, they're trying to create parallels to the struggle for gay rights, and this is where we have to be careful because this is why I lean on science where possible, because I want to check my biases. I don't think that in 2020 I'm some uber enlightened Homo sapien that has all the answers right here, right now. And I certainly don't think that people will look back on me as a beacon of virtue in the future. There will no doubt be things and views and things I have that will date badly, as with all of us. That's what happens with progression. And I am very much aware that in living memory, being gay was pathologised. There were treatments for it on the NHS, our National Health Service. It was seen as a malady. It was seen as something that wasn't real. There was a lot of bigotry. We all know the story of that. And to some people, it feels like the pushback to some of the excesses of the trans movement is an extension of that or a repeat of that. This pushback from a place of ignorance based on something new, something unknown, a desire to oppress progression. So that's why, in order to check my thinking, I lean on the science. I look to the data. I try and find out what it is we know and the consequences of what we are saying. And I feel like the science and the common sense falls very firmly on the side of people like J.K. Rowling right now. But I suppose time will tell. Are we going to hell?
I think you're a bigot.
Fair.
And a TERF.
A TERF, yeah, that's a new one.
Wait, do you describe yourself as a feminist, though?
It depends what that means now. These labels have become so... If you want to talk about...
So you're a TER then, not a TERF. You're a turd.
If you want to ask whether or not I believe in gender equality, yes, I'm a feminist, but obviously that's not what that word tends to mean anymore when it's invoked, unfortunately. I'm very much like anti-racist. We all know what we're going to encounter when we come across an anti-racist nowadays, which might bring me on to the UK's second largest chain of supermarkets called Sainsbury's. And they're doing what you'd expect from any corporate entity right now, and they're hard virtue signalling on the issue of Black Lives Matter and Black History Month, which I don't really care about so much. If you think it's a good PR move to support that organisation and virtue your signal, and for some strange reason...
You mean signal your virtue?
What did I say?
You said virtue your signal.
Virtue your signal. See, it's like feeding the hand that bites you. What is going on? Okay. Yeah, but if you think that's a good move, basically, and you want to let people know for some strange reason that you don't really hate black people, which I find suspicious to begin with, that's fine. But there was something that caught my eye in their statement, and it's probably not what it originally seemed, but I'm not entirely sure. But you must have seen this. Sainsbury's basically announced a big list of things they were going to do as part of Black History Month, and included in that was the sentence, which I shall read, and this is from Sainsbury's official website. It says, recently we provided our black colleagues with a safe space to gather in response to the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, how does that read to you? What do you think that means?
It just sounds really pathetic to me. I would ask Sainsbury's, how many black managers do you have? How many members of your board are black? None.
I've done the research on this. I think I spied one ethnic minority, but it's mostly white men, which again, I don't have a problem with. I'm all for meritocracy.
I do. Cancel all white men.
Yeah. However, I have a problem with that if you're going to virtue signal and lecture us and wag your finger at us about diversity and inclusion, because that's what they did. So a lot of people took umbrage with that statement. The statement that they will be providing a safe space to gather for black colleagues. A safe space to gather for black colleagues sounds to anyone who's proficient in the English language that they will be providing a space for black colleagues to gather. A literal physical space which is to be cocooned and preserved from the evil whiteys working in Sainsbury's, who are obviously just waiting to do a race-based hate crime at any opportunity in the veg aisle or something. I don't know how it works. So when people
I just have to ask myself, why do black people who work for Sainsbury's need this safe space? I mean, is Sainsbury's a dangerous environment? I mean, okay, fine, sometimes I'll see like a spillage in one of the aisles.
Clean up on aisle 5.
Yeah, that's about as dangerous as it gets. I mean, might slip on that shit, but apart from that, I have to admit, I went into Sainsbury's earlier today.
Oh, fuck you. Fuck you.
I needed
Unbelievable. Pro-segregation Ramzan.
My need for bowls was greater than any political cause, okay?
But it's in response to the Black Lives Matter movement. Why is it that some asshole cop in America unjustly kills a black man, and all of a sudden black people in Sainsbury's in the UK need a safe space? I don't understand why we are applying these American race relations to the UK society. We have a different history, we have a different set of equality laws and race relations than America. I don't understand why we are copying and pasting this American idea of what race relations are to the UK.
Because it's like what I said before, America fucking farts and, we smell it here, don't we? They sneeze, we catch a cold. So, I mean, this is what happens whenever there is a month, depending on what it is. So you have Pride Month, and every bank and supermarket will decide they're going to celebrate Pride Month, and you think, well, how exactly are you supporting Pride? You're a fucking bank. Like I said before, what you offering gay mortgages, I don't get it.
But they never supported it when it mattered. They do it because they think they're not... So Sainsbury's is part owned by Qatar. Do you really think they're pushing their inclusion and diversity mandate in that area of the world?
Yeah, what about migrant workers in Qatar?
This was really exposed when there's a computer. I think we may have touched on it briefly. They don't do it because they think they're fighting for equality. They do it because they think it will get them customers, which is fine. They're a business, but people need to understand this, because there's this video game company, and I forget which one it was now, but every single social media account during Pride changed their logo to the rainbow flag, which is fine, except for where it might have mattered in certain homophobic areas of the Middle East, where homosexuality is probably illegal and or could get you in violent trouble very quickly. So they want to display their pride credentials and finger wag at societies which are largely tolerant of homosexuality, but they don't want to offend actual homophobes in religious theocracies. How is that inclusive?
It's all about ethical consumerism now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, these companies have realised that people are trying to be more ethical, whether it's to do with the environment or about LGBT issues or race relations. An increasing amount of people, particularly younger, are, more ethically aware. So
they mean better than you. That's what they mean.
Well, I'm better than you, obviously. You. So that's what they think. Oh, we need to display our virtue and we can get customers. I mean, Black History Month has been part of the school curriculum for about 30 years or so.
I don't see that as a problem.
It's not an issue. So that's why I take umbrage with people who claim that, Black history was never taught in school. I never knew about this and that. And, it has been on the agenda for decades now. There are certain, when you're at school, there's only so much you can cover. There is. You can't cover absolutely everything under the sun, and that's why, certain schools or colleges, they'll concentrate on particular topics for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You can't know everything. But I think in terms of Sainsbury's and, this announcement, I just found it ironic when, Laurence Fox, he of the anti-woke brigade, is now claiming he doesn't want to shop there anymore, and he's urging others to do the same. I mean, this is the person who's supposed to be against cancel culture, right? So what are you only you only speak out, you're only against yourself being cancelled, but you're okay with urging others to boycott a supermarket. Now, if you don't want to shop there, that's fine. You don't have to shop there. I don't see why you have to urge other people to do the same, because you're just getting as bad as the people who are trying to cancel you. I shopped in Sainsbury's earlier. I needed cereal bowls.
Unbelievable.
Okay,
Unbelievable.
Don't give a fuck. Okay, fuck. Black. Fuck you all, okay? I will not be silenced.
You sound like the person who runs Sainsbury's social media account, because when basically they said that I don't give a fuck you, when people had an issue with this idea of racial segregation, they got a lot of pushback, and no doubt they did get some sort of knuckle dragging toothless moron, why, where's White History Month kind of thing, all right, whatever. But they released a statement, basically. They had a lot of pushback about this idea of segregation and discrimination of black staff, and they said on their social media feed on Twitter, and I quote, "We are proud to celebrate Black History Month together with our black colleagues. So far, so good. Customers and communities, and we will not tolerate racism. Well done, Sainsbury's. You will not tolerate congratulations. Where do I send the medal?
You're a racist. That's fine.
Wonderful. You are
like
so bloody wonderful, Sainsbury's. You really you won't tolerate racism? My goodness, we fucking Jesus Christ, radicals over here not tolerating racism, Iram. Can you imagine? Did you ever thought you'd live to see the day when someone would come out swinging against racism? Then they go out to say, and this is the problem, Iram, this is where they got a bit giddy, they got a bit carried away, and I don't think this washes well with the British public. They said, "We proudly represent and serve our diverse society, and anyone who does not want to shop with an inclusive retailer is welcome to shop elsewhere."
Yeah, racist. Go shop.
And that's how it was termed.
Shopping. What's a racist shop? Go shopping. Waitrose. There you go. No, okay, that's mean. Oh no, I'm gonna get sued by Waitrose.
Waitrose.
Go shop.
I saw somebody refer to them as in Sainsbury's, which I quite like.
I do like that. Yeah, so there you go, you white supremacists. You can shop elsewhere now.
But this is the issue, because a lot of them, the Metro, for instance, they did an article on Laurence Fox. Now, I'm not saying Laurence Fox is always right. Sometimes I think he's spot on. Some other times I think he takes a weird turn that I'm not on board with. I think
even a broken clock is right twice.
Exactly, yeah. I think he can be inconsistent, which is fine. He's a human, as far as I'm aware.
Don't care. If you're not perfect, you're out.
So I shall read what he tweeted, which got him in trouble. Laurence Fox tweeted, "Dear Sainsbury's, I won't be shopping in your supermarket ever again whilst you promote racial segregation and discrimination. I sincerely hope others join me. Hashtag boycott Sainsbury's." Now, we can discuss about whether him calling for other people to boycott is indicative of council culture. I think you might have a good case for that. But what he's doing
he is urging them to boycott.
Yeah, I agree. But what he's doing there, he's taking issue with policies and statements that he feels are actually racist, right? Now, here's how the Metro summarised it in their headline. "Laurence Fox boycotts Sainsbury's as they support Black History Month and vow not to tolerate racism."
Okay, that's right.
So it's as if Laurence Fox has gone, What, Sainsbury's aren't going to tolerate racism? What, they're celebrating Black History Month? Not on my watch, thank you very much. I'm straight off to Aldi. I thank you.
It's a stupid headline.
Yeah,
Definitely
but
a stupid headline.
And we know, and you know, and I know that, and everyone knows that a lot of people, especially on social media with their attention deficit disorder, don't tend to read further than a headline. So he's just had abuse levelled at him, accusations of racism. However, in further developments, a little while later, Sainsbury's actually clarified, and I'll read what they said. They said, and this is in response to Laurence Fox's message, they've put, "The safe spaces we created in response to the Black Lives Matter movement were online support groups that helped our black colleagues come together, share their experiences, and support one another." So they're saying it's not a literal physical space where people can gather. It's actually an online support group for black people, which I still have an issue with. Have support for everybody. Don't divide people on racial lines. It is the worst possible idea you can have as an anti-racist solution to say, we'll have the black group, we'll have the other group, ethnic minorities need to go here, you whiteys over here. And it's just a recipe for disaster. This complete re-racialization of our society is going to end tragically, and I'm a little bit worried about what's coming over the hill in response to it, I'll be honest.
But then also, if as a company you're all about diversity and equal opportunities and all that crap, then you have to look at the top. How many black and Asian members do you have on the board? If you have none, then why are you coming out there with these idiotic statements? Actually do something about it rather than putting a shitty little statement out on your Twitter or Facebook feed to show how diverse and non-racist you are. It just doesn't wash with many people anymore. People see right through that.
I wrote a blog about this, which I'll put a link to in the show notes. And I actually linked to the point that the board is overwhelmingly white. I'm looking at the faces now. It's just white. And if that's your board and you've not expressed any desire or intentions to change that, but you want to finger wag at the rest of the country and call us all racist and tell us all we're against inclusion and diversity, and we're not keen on efforts to stop racism, I'm not buying it, unfortunately. Just sell us fucking food, you tits. That's how I feel.
Speaking of white guys, Trump and Corona.
He's got the COVID, hasn't he?
He's got it. He's going around maskless, shaking hands and whatnot. He got Corona. I mean, it's God. I mean, I'm not celebrating it. I think it's quite sick to celebrate something like that, even if it is Trump.
Yeah.
But this is rather ironic that this is somebody who is just making light of it. In the beginning, and has done for quite some time, and now he's seriously ill, had to be hospitalized because his levels of oxygen were low.
Has that definitely happened? Because I've kind of seen conflicting reports, and I've seen him release sort of video clips on Twitter, and he seems to be okay for someone who might be seriously ill. So I'm not sure.
They had to put him in hospital because his oxygen level was lower than it should have been. It wasn't dangerously low, but it was lower than it should have been. And don't forget, he's 74, and he's obese.
Yeah, he's clinically obese, and
okay.
I'm not saying that to be, take the piss out of somebody's weight or features, the big fat fuck, but he is clinically obese. I jest, sort of.
I think he's out now. I mean, I think he said he was getting ready to get back to work. So, yeah, he seems to be okay. Yeah, but there were some people who thought it was a big conspiracy. You always have conspiracy theories. We have seen people here in London protesting against these lockdown measures. They're anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers as well. I mean, they're going to be everywhere.
Just call them idiots. They're fucking idiots. Anti-vaxxers, I'm saying, anti-maskers, they're idiots. I fully accept there are people that do have legitimate grievances about their liberties being curtailed by this pandemic, and they have some serious and sincere challenges to the science that's being implemented here. I get those people exist, but the anti-vaccine cranks are obviously idiots. But I suppose the question is, should they be roughed up by the police and moved along and fined, whereas BLM can just seemingly march?
Look at all these yeah, exactly. Look at all these BLM protesters, and everyone's like, oh, but they were largely peaceful. Right, okay. So it's okay for them to go out and about. Do you remember when we saw images of people flocking to Bournemouth, to sunbathe on the beach because it's really hot? Well, can you fucking blame people? It's hot. You don't want to be stuck in the house.
And it was name and shame. Everyone was outraged. It was name and shame. Like, oh, look, if there's another spike, it will be your fault. You killed Grandma. Killing Granny. Well, first of all, they're going on about killing Granny. Well, I'm sorry, but Matt Hancock was saying that, oh, don't kill Granny. But it's like, well, King killed Granny back in March because you were ill prepared and, discharging patients from hospitals back into care homes. So, fuck you. And secondly, so it's not right for people to go out to the beach in open air, but it's okay to protest about BLM because, that's an important cause. That's okay. That's on our side. So they're allowed to do that. But, nobody agrees with the right for these anti-vaxxers to go out and march. I mean, if one of them ends up getting it, or a few of them, then at least they... That's science. Well, there you go. It's an experiment.
Science.
Yeah.
Science.
So, I mean, on Trump, I personally, I'm not a fan of Trump. We've been critical of Trump. I like to think that I'm fair in my criticism. I like to think that I have defended Trump when he's been misrepresented, which does happen a lot. I do think there is something to this idea of Trump derangement syndrome, and I think they really hinder a sensible conversation on the problem of Trump, to the point where if you're someone shouting Nazi, fascist, it's very difficult for sensible people to rise above that level of absolute lunacy and have a serious discussion about Donald Trump's shortcomings. But as someone who's pro-America, as someone who's visited there numerous times, who feels feels a kinship with my American cousins and does consider them our strongest ally, I would be very sad to see their elected leaders succumb to this virus. I really would. I don't think it would be good for the country. I don't think the people literally praying for the demise of Donald Trump here and celebrating it know quite what they're asking and what that might do to the national character and what that might do for civil unrest and just diplomatic relations in general. If your fucking president dies, just have a think about what you're saying. So I do wish him a speedy recovery, but I also openly admit that I don't want him to win the next election. But a lot could change between now and then.
I'm interested to see what happens. I mean, this could be a game changer. You never know. And also, I wonder how his support, because Biden is polling very high, but then I think maybe so too was Hillary Clinton. Back in 2016.
It was a dead cert for Clinton.
It was a dead cert for her as well, and then she lost. And could it be the same with Biden? I mean, I don't know about you, but the guy looks like he's knocking on death's door. He just looks
don't understand
so frail.
American politics. I don't understand that how it's come down to them two men specifically. How, out of all the people who could run and all the charismatic and intelligent individuals on the planet, you have these two battling for the top job. Joe Biden, I honestly, I feel nothing for that man. There's nothing about him that excites me. The best thing I could possibly say right now is he'll be okay. He probably won't do anything stupid, and he'll probably engender a level of calm that Trump is incapable of. He probably won't infuriate the chattering classes as much. It might bring a level of chill to the American climate to have somebody so vanilla, dull, middle of the road, 2 terms barely, not really any noticeable legacy. But they need to get a grip of the issues that American voters care about, and I don't see the Democrats doing that. I don't see any good reason for people who were in Trump's camp before to leave Trump's camp and become Democrats. But the only thing I think this rests on, the only thing that I think will sway it and swing it in the Democrats' favour, is if all the people who didn't vote last time realise how much they fucked up and they come out in droves this time, because there was an attitude, and I think I had this attitude as well, I think many of us did, that there was no way on planet Earth that TV celebrity was getting, that idiot, that motor-mouth, incoherent, babbling narcissist, there's no way that man is getting anywhere near the White House, and we were all blindsided. Now, luckily...
It's the same happened with Brexit
yes.
as well. Everyone kept thinking it wouldn't happen.
So maybe this time people will think, I better get my arse out and vote, and maybe that'll make the difference, because it wasn't a huge amount of difference between Clinton and Trump. So that's that. Do you think we should look at some questions?
Yeah. Oh, Neil Hayden asking if I felt safe in Sainsbury's. I don't know, I did see a couple of white people, and I did keep my berth, I have to say. But yes, I did. I felt safe. I was able to shop there in peace. I bought my cereal bowls, very nice cereal bowls they were. I don't know what else I can say.
All right, so basically, Sainsbury's hasn't descended into a white supremacist hellhole just yet, but we'll keep an eye on that.
I did notice a white guy in front of me going in, so I don't know if that means that that more white people feel more comfortable shopping in Sainsbury's now. I don't know. I really can't say, but
we'll keep tabs on that as it develops.
I can confirm, felt safe, and I'm not a traitor.
Oh, this is a great question, which feeds into what we've just been talking about. So Dave Watts on Twitter has asked, how bad does someone have to be before it is okay to wish them dead? Hitler, Stalin, Saddam, Mao, Osama bin Laden, Pol Pot, Trump? I don't think Trump is Hitler, and I don't want him to die, but
he's not.
But to be totally honest, if he did, I wouldn't be upset. Now that's a great question, because on occasion I have quite liked the idea of a fiery drone-induced death for certain members of ISIS, but they're literally engaged in murder, rape, and various other acts of terrorism.
As far as I'm concerned, Trump hasn't done that. If anything, I think he may have brought about peace to the Middle East.
Nobel Peace Prize is beckoning.
I mean, look, you've got Saudi Arabia, which is now in talks with... Well, no, it was UAE, wasn't it? Sorry,
UAE, yep. Israel.
Normalised relations with Israel.
Calm things down with North Korea.
Historic. Yeah. I wonder if that's because, Trump basically came to power on the basis, one of the bases that was that he didn't really want to be fighting wars abroad. He wanted to step back, and countries like the UAE have realised that they can't rely on American power there. They have to ally with someone else, particularly when they perceive Iran as the biggest threat. And who can their natural ally be? Well, it has to be Israel. Now, there are some people who said, this is going to be really bad for the Palestinians, blah, blah, blah. But I wonder if that will actually be the opposite. Could it be a way for... the Palestinian side to get their act together and make sure that they get some of the changes that are required for them. Remains to be seen. It's early days. But, then you had Sudan come out and say that they wanted to normalise relations with Israel. Probably because they realised that boycotting them has done nothing for them. And, this idea of this Muslim Brotherhood, it's all a big farce, really. So, yeah... Wow, well done, Trump.
Well, I've just got a breaking news notification. Donald Trump's dead. No, sorry, my mistake. Donald Trump said he will leave hospital later on Monday.
Oh, that was cruel.
I'm allowed to do that because I know he's going to be okay. But it's a great question about wishing death upon public figures and what various levels of transgressions they must have engaged in for that sort of behaviour to be okay. I just personally think it demonstrates a lack of class. I know I'm like, Christopher Hitchens is one of my big heroes, and he had no problem with celebrating the deaths of his enemies, and I get it. There's that... I think there's that compulsion in all of us, that instinct of what we'd like to do. I just think you lose a little bit of the moral high ground, unless you can do it with such class and wit as someone like Christopher Hitchens, which very few people can. But I did notice as well, for instance, when Margaret Thatcher died, and I'm no fan of Thatcher, I grew up in Greater Manchester in a working class environment. You will not hear a good word about that woman anywhere. But when she died, people my age who hadn't really lived under her, hadn't really experienced or tasted the effects of her reign, were literally celebrating. And I just thought, what are you doing?
I don't think how you can celebrate that when you didn't even remember her. Like, you were probably 2 when she died.
What does that? Yeah, exactly. What does that reveal about you, that you're celebrating in the death of an old woman? And it's just, I find it strange. It's your choice, but I do find it very peculiar. I do think it. I do, and especially if you're in a place of institution where, you know, if you're a journalist, if you're somebody with a platform and authority, and you want to project out what you think is a good perspective, and you're basically, if you're, it's low level, isn't it? I hope they die. Well, come on, how much more basic does it get than that? I hope that person I don't like dies.
Well, Dave Watts also asked, well, not asked, but it's a comment, Brid O'Donnell of the Hist, which is a debating society in Dublin, cancelling Richard Dawkins and being quoted as saying the comfort of our membership is paramount. Right, so I think what's happened here is Richard Dawkins, has he been no platform?
Yes.
And not been allowed to attend some sort of debate there.
Yep.
And it's due to comments he made in the past. I think this was his very, very famous interview with Mehdi Hassan on Al Jazeera, and they claimed he was trying to
times.
Yes, he apparently was trying to downplay sexual abuse of children, which really wasn't doing. You know, it's not like he said.
You're talking about Mehdi Hassan tried to downplay this.
Yes.
Okay.
Mehdi, this is right. You have a very prominent journalist who openly admits that he believes in flying horses, and he still gets to keep his job. He got promoted and moved to America, probably because you get a lot of religious nutters there as well. And nothing happens to him. His career doesn't suffer, even though he admits to believing in mythical flying creatures. And Richard Dawkins, several years later, gets cancelled because the comfort of our membership is paramount.
Yeah.
Comfort. So,
first of all, he's in trouble here for what he said about Islam. Nobody's cancelling him for the way he speaks about Christianity. And in fact, that was celebrated. And there's a bit of a misconception about Richard Dawkins that his polemic is mainly based on Islam, which it's actually the opposite. When the God Delusion came out, I think something like 2006, I believe, it was almost exclusively about Christianity, because that's the climate and culture us Brits and much of the Western world lives in. So that was his chief focus. And he had, as he's a scientist, as an evolutionary biologist, he was very concerned about creationism, which is the pseudo-scientific ideology of Christians trying to push creation myths into our schools. And at the time, there was a huge war raging about evolution versus intelligent design and indoctrinating children. And that's what he focused on. Nobody batted an eyelid. He won awards. He was the darling. He was invited everywhere. Liberals slapped him on the back. The Guardian ran front pages on him. Second he talks about Islam, he's cancelled. And this happened to him back on a radio station. I think I wrote about it in 2017. And once again, his comments about Islam were the reason. So these people are essentially saying Islam is beyond criticism. It sounds there's a word for this, isn't there? Isn't there a concept that you can label, that you can pinpoint for not being able to criticise certain religion? Oh, that's it, blasphemy. Blasphemy laws. These ultra-woke progressive students are actually enforcing Islamic blasphemy codes, which is just the strangest thing possible. You'd think that students would be these fuck authority, stick two fingers up, behave like radicals, and I can't think of anything more authoritative than the word of God. And they're actually saying, could you just leave Islam alone, please? Because we have to protect what they perceive to be their ethnic minority friends, which is just so racist at the same time. So, yeah, if Richard Dawkins is a problem as a speaker, you've got bigger problems than Richard Dawkins, I believe. He's very mild. As a matter of fact, he actually got criticised by Douglas Murray years ago for shirking a responsibility to criticise Islam. Dawkins actually shied away from it. On occasion, he did give some mealy-mouthed answers to try and avoid pointing the finger at Islam, and Douglas Murray picked up on it. They've since rekindled, and they're all good now. I've heard the good. Dickie Dawkins and Dougie, they're fine. I think we've been at events when they've spoke together. since. So that's that. But obviously, if you want to talk about Islam in 2020 Britain, consider yourself cancelled.
But it's funny, speaking of Islam,
be careful.
There's a guy from the Muslim Council of Britain who, he goes around correcting all these news articles and pictures.
Yeah,
and
fuck.
he's found massive issue with the fact that some stories about coronavirus have got pictures of Muslims on them because people will associate corona with Islam, right? Which is bollocks.
Why?
I mean, this is someone who moans about diversity and lack of Muslim people. Because, it's not fair that Muslim people are only pictured when the stories about Islam or mosques or terrorism or something. Right, fine, I get it. So here you have stories, corona cases high in, I don't know, Leicester, which is a very quote-unquote diverse city,
very
right?
so diverse, Leicester.
So diverse, so colourful.
I love
so
diverse is such a shorthand for fewer white people. We are living in Orwellian times.
Yeah, so there's a picture of, say, Leicester, and there's a street, and there's a Muslim woman on the street in the picture, and she's wearing a mask, obviously to protect herself from corona or whatever. And he's moaning about that because, Why does the story have to be illustrated with Muslim? Oh, I'm sorry. What would you rather have? Should Muslims only appear in stories when it comes to terrorism or something?
See, this is a grievance industry. This is a grievance industry. So his organisation,
you can't win.
What's his organisation called to look at the
Muslim Council of Britain?
Not just that one.
Oh, you mean the other one?
The offshoot, which he uses to look into Muslim representation in mainstream media and politics. So he's basically collating all these examples and categorizing them as Islamophobia or anti-Muslim bigotry, however you want to word it. So he's saying if you use a picture of a Muslim woman in the context of coronavirus, that goes in the box of statistics. If you mention that the bomber at Manchester Arena, Salman Abedi, was praying in the foyer of the venue before he detonated himself, taking out 22 mostly young children, that is Islamophobic, and he's collating all this data, and at the end of the year when he's got it all together, we'll see headlines in the fucking Guardian about there was 42% of stories which were portrayed Muslims in a negative light in the media. Then that'll be fired around as evidence of the growing hatred in our society, when really there's probably not a better place on planet Earth to live as a practicing Muslim than the UK, strangely. So that's the game that he's played. It's this grievance industry of we are the victims, where we're constantly under the cosh, the media hate us, everyone wants to portray us as some sort of evil force, and it's just not true. But he'll have the data by the end of the year or whenever it is, whenever he's trying to get government funded or members or some column inches, he'll have the data and it'll all be full of these stupid examples where people have just reported the reality of the situation.
Yeah, and also, do you remember, right, so the Salman Abedi one, so there's an inquest into the bombing, and eyewitnesses said they saw him praying beforehand, and he had a really large backpack, and that made the headlines, right?
Yeah.
And then he, of course, complained, and I think the BBC changed the headline because it was because he claimed, now people are going to view praying Muslims with suspicion. Right, so I don't know about you, Stephen, but when I last went to a concert, I never saw anybody praying. And also, if I saw somebody with a large fucking backpack in a concert acting all shifty and then maybe praying beforehand, you're too fucking right, I'd dob him in. Because last time I went to a concert, you don't get really, really, really religious, observing religious or fundos going to concerts because they're everything they stand against. You don't usually find hardcore Muslims at concerts, for crying out loud. Of course it's suspicious.
It's very, very difficult to confuse the Manchester Arena with the fucking interfaith room. And this isn't a trivial detail. Just moments before somebody detonates themselves at a pop concert, he's seen with a backpack praying in the foyer. That's not trivial. That's not inconsequential. That's nothing. And all people like this loon from the MCB are doing is they're creating a climate where people might actually feel uncomfortable about noticing or reporting that. This is the idea that political correctness can kill isn't entirely far-fetched, because if you see that at a pop concert, I'm the kind of guy who's going to make an issue of it. I'm going to notice it. I might think about telling someone. I might think about keeping a close eye on it. But some people will think, I can't. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm being silly. Maybe I'm being prejudiced. I shouldn't judge our Islamic friends in that way. Well, I'm here to tell you, if you see someone praying at a public venue with a backpack the size of a fucking golf buggy, you might want to mention it to somebody. I'd rather be thought of as a bigot than think about an opportunity to have prevented one of the worst terror attacks to happen on British soil. That's how I feel. And nobody's suggesting we go and fucking knock down the doors of the mosque for people praying or people in their homes. It is a very odd thing to do anywhere. And I don't know if you remember, not so long ago, some Christian loon on a Metrolink or wherever, on a bus or something, was reading aloud from his literature, his Christian literature, and people were freaked out by it because that's a strange thing to do in public. Really pious acts of fundamentalism in public are a concern, regardless of who they're coming from, and it's okay to think they are. And I'm really annoyed that the BBC listened to him and scrubbed all mention of that from their headline. What are the public going to think now? That they should or shouldn't be concerned about this sort of behaviour.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? Like, oh, it's unfair, you're equating things like this with terrorism. He actually did go on to blow up a fucking arena.
Most Muslims would have thought that was odd behaviour. Fuck me. It's just, we can't even, you know what I mean? It's like, next it'll be, if someone's shouting Allahu Akbar in public, don't jump to conclusions.
Just assume he's praying and he'll be fine. It's just a declaration
of faith. Why are you getting so uppity about it at 9 o'clock rush hour on the fucking tube? It's insane. I don't think we have the tools and or stomach to combat Islamism. I think I'm just going to ride it out into an early grave. I think, drink myself to death and just get it over with.
Oh my God. I
haram myself to death. That's what I'm going to do.
Do you know, I was just thinking, I'm gonna eat myself to an early death. Death by chocolate. That's
it's a good way to go.
Eat chocolate and then just die early, because this world is getting crazier by the friggin' week, and I don't know how much more I can handle. I really don't.
Well, quick question. I mean, this might feed into what we've just said about eating ourselves and or drinking ourselves to death, but Drexel Spivey has the avatar of Gary Oldman's character from True Romance there. Great performance, if anyone's not seen it. Drexel asked, if you had a crystal ball and knew for sure that end times are coming, as 2020 suggests they are anyway, but you were armed with this knowledge for certain, how would you spend your final 3 months? So you've got 3 months to live, Iram. What are you doing? Yeah. I mean, I refer to my previous answer of death by alcoholism, I think.
Death by chocolate.
I might throw in some meth for shits and giggles.
I would stalk like Hugh Jackman or Enrique. I'd just get all the hottest guys I know and just spend the night with them.
That's it. I mean, it's. I'd like to think I'd try and dedicate myself to figuring out a way to better mankind in them final 3 months. But no, it would descend into hedonism and debauchery straight. As a matter of fact, I don't even need 3 months to live to fall that far into the abyss. I'll be honest. It's called a Tuesday. So yeah, don't rely on me for anything if I've got 3 months left. Is what I'm saying. You might want to keep out of the way. Unless you've got some Class A substances.
And on that note...
don't shop at Sainsbury's. What are you doing?
I needed cereal bowls, okay? And they were really pretty. Fuck you. You gonna buy my cereal bowls? I don't think so.
Right. We need this has been a long, ranty one, so we need a word that people can hashtag to test their commitment to taking the myth.
Hashtag cereal bowls.
Hashtag cereal bowl. I mean, it's as esoteric as anything. And on that note, it's been a pleasure.
Has indeed.
Thank you for listening to the Godless Spellchecker podcast. The podcast is a one-man operation, produced in my spare time away from my day job, and I love making it for you. If you enjoy what you hear, please consider lending some support. The show is entirely listener supported. I don't sell anything, I don't run ads, and given the alternative and unpopular focus of my content, it's very unlikely to find a sponsor. So there are a number of ways you can support and chip in and help improve the show and give me more time to produce more content. You can become a patron supporter and pledge a monetary amount per month or per episode by visiting patreon.com/gspellchecker. If you can't lend monetary support right now, don't worry, there's other ways you can help the podcast too. You can share it on your various social media networks, or take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to it. Your support is massively appreciated. Thank you. Think we've all learned something here today?